What's up? It's Jake from Nimbus DevOps, and I'm here today to talk to you about containerizing applications. So I know some of y'all are developers and you're making apps and they're super whizzy cool and go fast, um, but you're not putting them in a Docker container, or I'm not seeing them in a Docker container, or maybe you're pushing up to Git, but there's no Docker file. And then some of y'all are architects or engineers, and you're building Kubernetes clusters and EKS and GKS and all this stuff, but you're like deploying a Hello World web app. So what you need to do is you need to learn how to meet everyone in the middle. So as a DevOps guy, I would want to show everyone just how to do that. So what do you have to do? So I have a let me go back here. I'm in test RM RF 2048. Okay, so I have a directory I just made called test, and in this directory, I'm going to build an app. Now, I don't claim to be a developer. I can play one on TV, but I do know that I like playing the game 2048 on my phone sometimes. And if you go do a Google search for 2048 GitHub, you'll find several projects, but this one I like a lot. So kudos to this dude. Hey, you did a great job. And he published his code here, and you've probably seen it. Maybe you've seen it. It looks like this. And let's say I want to copy this and I want to use it to like build clusters or something like that. So normally the flow would be you copy the HTTPS URL from the repo, and then you go to a directory on your machine somewhere and you type git clone, and then you just type the URL. And I did delete the tilde at the end of that, but there's a reason for that. So anyways, now I have a directory called 2048. So I'm going to go inside this directory, and I've got some files, and I can open with code dot a new window that has all of my code in it, and I can just work out of this directory from now on. So there's a an extension you can use in VS Code called Live Server. And Live Server allows you to basically use your computer as a web server for static or dynamic content. So I recommend install that, and then you can just right click on your index.html file and say open with Live Server. And what that does is it finds an available port, as you can see here, and it will open up a web page to just your home IP address on whatever port, and this is your index.html file. And I could just sit here and play this game all day long. And now I have this guy's app that he wrote, and I'm running it on my computer using Live Server, which is pretty cool, right? So let's say you want to put this in the cloud. You could put this on like an EC2 instance on AWS, or let's say you want to send it to a friend, or you want to put it on VMware, or you want to put it in Azure or Google or whatever, OpenShift. So instead of building it on your server like I did, you can put it in a Docker container. So first, make sure you have Docker Desktop installed for Mac and Windows, or just install Docker Community Edition, Docker CE, if you're on Windows or on Linux, and um, you'll get a window like this. You don't have to use this. And just to make sure it's working, all you have to do is just type Docker, and you should get some kind of output like this that gives you a list of commands. So if you're getting that back, then you have Docker installed. And what you want to do is you want to find a way to uh, containerize this application. So first, just me. This is just a me thing. I'm going to make sure I don't have any outstanding containers or images. App, I want to do a Docker RMI, and then we're going to delete mobile app. There we go. And voila, I'm ready. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to build a Docker file. So I'm just going to create a new file in this directory, 2048 directory, with a capital D. I'm just going to call it Docker file. And in here, I need to just do 3 little lines. This is the bare minimum to get you going. So I'm going to say from, and then I'm going to create an Nginx container. So instead of having an entire operating system, I'm just going to say I just need Nginx, and it'll use the underlying resources from my computer to take care of it. So this is super, super, super light. And if you do Nginx like this, it will go grab the latest Docker image from the official Nginx image repository, and it'll get the latest version. Once I have this container, I want to copy all the code in my current directory to /user/share/nginx/html, which is the Nginx version of saying var www html in Apache. Then all I need to do is I need to expose port 80 so that we can communicate with this container on port 80. So now I have my Docker file I saved, and I'm ready to build my Docker image. And all my Docker image is just going to be Nginx with my code, my 2048 code in it. So I'm going to say Docker build -t for tag, and I'm going to call this, I don't know, I called it mobile app last time. So mobile app, and I want you to look for the Docker file in my current directory. I hit enter, and it's going to build my Docker image. So what it's doing right now is it's going out to the internet, it's finding the official Nginx Docker image repository, and it's going to copy that down to my computer, and then copy my files over to that user share Nginx HTML directory inside the container, and then expose port 80. So now that this image is built, you don't have to copy files ever again. So unlike a user data script or configuration management, it's one and done. This is like the equivalent of an AMI in the EC2 world. So now that you have a Docker image, you can see it by typing Docker images, and I can see right here I have a mobile app Docker image, and we want to build a container out of this image. So all you have to do is say Docker run and then interactive TTY detached, and I'm going to do some port forwarding. So we're going to say that port 8000 on my computer is going to forward to port 80 on the Docker container for the mobile app image. I hit enter, and it creates a container. And you can see that by doing a Docker container ls. And there's my container. And I can see my container ID, what image it was built out of, when it was created, how long it's been up, and it's allowing all IPs on my computer, so my computer. And if I hit port 8000 on my computer, it's going to forward it, see the little arrow, to port 80 on the Docker container. So, and it gives a little canonical name, a fun one. So, and you can change update that. So the next step would be to actually test this. And just open a web page and go like a browser and go to localhost on port 8000, and we can see welcome to Nginx. Okay, there. So it's installed. So I just refreshed, and now I can see that I can play this game, but instead of running in live server on my computer in VS Code, I'm actually playing this game hosted on my computer as like a node in a Docker container, which is pretty cool. So we just basically, this is a down and dirty version of containerizing an application, which is pretty awesome. So now what you can do is you can play this all day long. You can share it with your friends. You can share this Docker image, or the Docker image with whoever you want to share it with. You could push it up to AWS Elastic Container Registry and build an EKS or an ECS cluster, and have a whole cluster that's monitored and highly available and all this other stuff, and multi-AZ that just runs 2048. And you could, put a load balancer in front of it and put a custom domain Route 53 rule to have to serve this on a custom domain, like your domain or whatever. So it's sky's the limit. But now you can take whatever your favorite app is, you can go find a GitHub repo, clone it down, build a Docker file, and then take that Docker file and do whatever you want with it. Push it wherever you want. You could build something in VMware. You could build it in Google, Azure, AWS, OpenStack, a Raspberry Pi, doesn't matter. Minikube cluster on your computer, whatever. So that's essentially the basics. So let me show you, if you are going along with me on this, how to clean up. So you have a container. So the first thing you're going to need to do is do Docker container stop, and then give it the container ID, and it'll stop your container. And if I do a Docker container ls, I can see it's not running. But if I do a ls-a, I can see that it's just an exited container that's chilling there. So if you want to clean that up, you can say Docker container prune. It'll say, are you sure you want to remove everything? Say yes. And then now there's nothing there. But I still have an image, so I can go to Docker images and I can just remove this by saying docker remove image or RMI, and then we want to remove mobile app, and now it's gone, and I can confirm that, and there you go. So it's all cleaned up. If you want to get more information on this, just ask questions, but I figure this is a good quick start kind of thing to get you going with Docker, or just containers in general. You don't have to use the Docker engine. You can use whatever you want, but this is a pretty common one, so I'd recommend learning this. It's everywhere. And yeah, so no more building hello world clusters, okay? If I see out there and you're building hello world clusters, I'm gonna start asking you questions. And if you're a developer, think about, like, take your code one step further. It may work on your machine and it may work on a web server, but try to get it to work in a Docker container. And all that's required is that you build at least these 3 steps. You can do a Docker ignore file to, maybe you don't want your Git ignore file going in there, or your README file, or your whatever you don't want to go in there, you can omit that. And some containers require a lot of software dependencies, and so you can run commands in here. You can just like yum install -y and then like whatever you need, npm, and yarn or something like that. Like you could do that. So if you need prerequisite software, it'll all be saved in the Docker image so that you don't have to tell somebody to install all this garbage or make some massive user data script on an EC2 instance with a bunch of dependencies. So once this is built and you have an image and it's saved and it's pushed in a repo, you don't have to build it anymore. All you're doing after that is building containers. And that's a lot faster. So there you go. If you have any questions, let me know. And if not, happy coding.